Lee Trevino, the leader of this Labatt's International Golf Classic. He has a 2-stroke lead on defending champion Lanny Watkins. Jim Nelford sharing third place with Tom Watson in difficulty on the 17th hole. He has placed his second shot in the bunker below the green.
Yeah, this is our leader, Lee Trevino, who has just hit his tee shot on the par 4 16th, 384 yards. We've been telling you a fairly easy hole, certainly off the tee, straight away. But the trouble comes when you have to hit that second shot. And we'll see Trevino do that in just a moment.
George Knudsen, who started with a 79 in this tournament and then came back with 71 and 72 on the 428-yard 17th hole. And he is on the left-hand side in the rough. He has about 150 yards remaining to the green. Jim Nelford in the bunker in front of the 17th hole, playing his third shot. Not a bad shot, but a still sizable putt for Nelford to save par on this 17th hole. We talked earlier about the problems he encountered in the past 2 rounds, a double bogey 6 on both Friday and Saturday on this particular hole.
Here we are back on the 16th hole, 384 yards. The second shot's about to be played by Lee Trevino, leading by 2 from Lanny Watkins, and by Dan Halderson, who has got to put on another miraculous finish if he's going to unseat Jim Nelford as the leading Canadian player. And of course he did put on that miracle finish yesterday by holding that wooden club shot for an eagle 2 at the 18th. What a great way to finish. And beautifully covered, by the way. We saw every inch of that golf ball's progress into the hole. But now Dan Halderson has considerable problems because he's right behind one of the bigger trees on this hole. And when these trees do mature, it's going to be a lot more fearsome, Steve, than it is at the moment.
That's one of the very few advantages that there are on this very difficult national course, and that is the fact that the course itself is still growing in terms of the trees that Ben pointed out. But Halderson is on the right side of the fairway in the rough, which is not too bad in itself, but it's that large tree on Dan's right that will present a bit of a problem into this elevated green. Pin today, cut in the front portion, and the trick to beating this hole, if there is one indeed, and that is to stay below the hole. Dan Halderson, second shot. Well, he's taken the direct route over the tree. And that is a magnificent shot from Dan Halderson. Absolutely superb.
Steve, Ben, this Dan Halderson's game has come a long way in the last 2 years. He has improved tremendously. He is.
That was Stan Leonard talking about Dan Halderson, and that was Lee Trevino playing his second shot at the 16th, and he's giving himself problems. Lanny Watkins losing no time at all. I think he probably wanted to play that below the hole. Wouldn't you think so, Stan Leonard?
Well, there's no question. If you get the ball above the cup on some of these greens, you're just hoping to get down in 2 putts. And if you're going to have a run at it, and Watkins has got to start to make some birdies, there's no question about where he has to leave the second shot.
We should point out that I believe it was in the second round that Trevino made just an absolutely miracle finish through the last holes, and maybe he can do it again. But here's Nelford on 17. Don?
Well, he has made some very fine putts to save par in the 3 preceding holes. He does it again. Jimmy Nelford has to leave 17 quite relieved. I'm sure he vividly recalls the problems he encountered on this particular hole the 2 previous days.
Well, Trevino is going to have to use all this fabulous touch and expertise around the green now, because if he drops another shot here, and Lanny Watkins would love that to happen, because Lanny's the kind of player who just jumps in and stabs you he gets the least opportunity. So this one is a very vital shot for Lee after that rather prodigal 3 putts to 15th.
He knows he has to make 4, Ben.
And he's got his work cut out to do it, Stan. A sizable putt side hill with a big right to left break coming up.
Well, he could be a little shook up right about now. If Lanny Watkins can make this birdie putt, then of course that's going to move that ball, I believe, a little further from the hole.
Stan, I'll tell you, I think that's a tougher putt for Lee Trevino than he had on 15, the one that he missed. But right now, Lanny Watkins, who has parred every hole today on this very difficult golf course, is going for birdie. Maybe this will be his first of the day. I would estimate to be about 25, 30 feet below the hole. We've seen that happen so many times, and I don't think Lanny can believe it, because he had the ball rolling towards the hole and it fell off at the last second. So Watkins does his job. He gets yet another par to remain at +3. And now a little pressure on Supermex Lee Trevino. But before Trevino gets a chance to see if he can salvage par, Dan Halderson will have a good shot at a birdie. And remember, of course, at stake in this championship is Low Canadian. Would appear to have been locked up by Jim Nelford when he went through 16, Ben, but if Halderson can birdie here and perhaps pull off another miracle at 18 on the way in, who knows?
Yes, Nelford's finished badly once or twice this week, but I don't think he's going to do so today.
Halderson for birdie. Look how quickly that picks up speed once it passed the hole.
5-time CPGA champion George Knudsen playing his second shot on 17. And Knudsen, like Nelford, who preceded him to this hole, has found the bunker below the green.
Well, this is really a must putt for Lee Trevino, and he'll stalk it from every angle. He usually describes a full circle when lining up his putts. Really has to get this one in, or it's going to be a very difficult final 2 holes for him. Big right to left break. This for par to remain 2 ahead of Lanny Watkins. Oh. Super.
You think he might be breathing a little easier right about now, Ben?
No error, Stan.
And now Dan Halderson, after watching Lee Trevino sink that outstanding putt with all the pressure, hoping no doubt that he can do the same. He needs this for par to remain at +10. Halderson duplicates Lee Trevino's feat and does indeed go to +10. But as Lee Trevino heads to the 17th tee, he retains that 2-shot lead over Lanny Watkins.
Bob Rose, who was very much in contention over the first couple of days, playing his 3rd shot on 17. He is 16 over par for the tournament. He started with a 69, one of the fine rounds of opening day. George Knudsen, who opened with a 79, in the trap, in the bunker below the 17th green. George started the day 9 over. He is now 11 over and in danger here of perhaps losing another shot.
Don, we should say these traps are a little more difficult today. We had an overnight rain, and consequently the sand is very heavy, and I don't think the golfers are getting the action on the ball that they did in the first 3 rounds.
Knudsen will be putting from above the hole, not really a desirable position on this 17th green. However, it is not nearly as difficult as it was yesterday. I'm sorry, Stan, I was going to say it caused nightmares for many of the players yesterday, particularly those who were putting from above the hole.
Well, they were just going bananas. I just don't think from the top side that you could do anything else but hit it and pray, and you just had to hope that you were going to stop it at the hole.
John Bland of South Africa, who won something like $2,600 in last year's championship at Shaughnessy, putting for a birdie on 18. They have to come up over the rise when putting from below the hole. And Ben Wright, John Bland is one of the fine players that South Africa has produced. The most notable, of course, Gary Player.
Yes, Don, he does a lot of travelling, this young man. He'll be back in Scotland tomorrow morning at Turnberry for the European Open Championship, and he likes to travel. He really enjoys the game. He said he wouldn't continue travelling if he didn't, and he gets around.
Well, you'll recall that Dave Barr, along with Phil Giroux, had those problems with the tree and the ball sitting on top of each other in the rough directly behind that tree on 17. And now Dave Barr, who is a member, along with Dan Halderson of Canada's World Cup team a year ago, putting for par on 18. He made bogey on 17.
Here's the ever popular grip, left hand turned away. Very routine.
A par on 18 for Dave Barr, a round today of 72. He had a bogey on this hole yesterday. He is 13 over par for the tournament. Yesterday was something of a disaster for Dave. He fired an 82 after rounds of 72 and 71 on Thursday and Friday.
And Don, if he could just eliminate that one bad round, this man's going to win himself a lot of money.
Seems to be a problem for Dave Barr in many of the tournaments he plays in. Phil Giroux, 22 over par, the ever-present cigar as he prepares for this par putt.
Would that be a steadying influence that Phil Giroux uses?
Whatever, he always has it with him. And he is 23 over par for the tournament. George Knudsen, trying to save par on 17, has a putt of 4 to 5 feet.
Don, I was going to mention earlier, Ben spoke about the fact that this man's played a lot of golf here at National, but sometimes all that experience sort of plays against you. You learn a little bit too much about the bad spots on the golf course.
George not doing much more than just getting that ball rolling, and there is an indication of relief, if you ever saw one, as George Knudsen holds out with a par 4 on 17.
Well, after George hits the ball, you can literally see the ball picking up speed. This cup is cut on an extreme downslope. Just catching the top left-hand corner, and he naturally heaves that big sigh of relief.
Tony Jacklin back on the 17th fairway, preparing to hit his second shot. Jacklin 9 over par for the tournament. 17th green, an elevated green, and Jacklin misses the putting surface. He is in the short fringe. Peter Townsend, who has seen his problems develop today after starting off very well with a birdie on the first hole, now at 8 over par, hitting an 8-iron second on this 428-yard hole. They are going downwind. On the putting surface, but with a long uphill putt to make birdie. Townsend started with a 69. He had a 71 and then a 75. Tom Watson has seen his rounds grow progressively worse, from a 72 to a 73 to a 76, but he's got things back today. He could come in with a 1 under par 70.
Don, this 17th hole does not play its full 428 yards. I would say that the boys are using a driver and 7-8 irons into this green.
Jim Nelford receiving a fine round of applause as he makes his way to the 18th green. Quite a large gallery here, and this is one of the reasons the spectators are applauding, not only for his fine play earlier, but for this second shot. He will have a birdie opportunity on 18 from 20 feet away. Nelford 3 under par today, and Nelford is at the moment tied for third spot with Tom Watson. The leader is still Lee Trevino. The 18th at the National, the site of the 1979 CPGA Labatt's International Golf Championship. Jose Canizares, Jim Nelford, and Jerry Anderson. On the 18th, we'll go back to 17. Tony Jacklin with his third shot.
Don, there's no way that that our friend Jacklin could be happy with the second shot that he hit. As we said earlier, you only had 125 yards coming into that green, and if you missed the green from that that distance, I think that you're asking for trouble.
He suggested he wasn't pleased with his second. I don't think he's really satisfied with his third either. Jerry Anderson has to be satisfied with the way he's played throughout most of this year. Putting for birdie on 18. Anderson, the winner of the Ontario, the Manitoba, and the Saskatchewan Opens. And Anderson is at 19 over par. Jim Nelford with an opportunity to break out of that deadlock with Tom Watson for third spot.
Don, he has a difficult putt. It's a speed putt. He's got to come up this hill, up the rise, and the putt will break from the golfer's left to right.
He has been extremely sharp with the putter over the last 4 holes. Peter Townsend's putt on 17. He had a long birdie attempt, and he has a putt of 3 feet to try and save par. Back at 18, Jim Nelford putting from 25 feet for birdie 3. He started it out with not quite enough borrow.
Don, he's got to be very happy with that. Finishing with 4 on this last hole, which is a converted par 5. I think anytime you walk off the 18th green with a 4 on this hole, you've got to be very happy.
Tom Watson putting for birdie on 17. He shares third spot currently with Jim Nelford. Difficult putt facing Watson for birdie 3. That ball just continues to roll. He is 2.5 feet away for his par 4. Jose Canizares, who is in the bunker with his second shot, blasted to within this distance, putting now for par. He slipped by on the low side, and it will be a bogey 5 for Canizares, the Spanish PGA champion, and he will finish at 15 over par for the tournament. A round today of 75 for Canizares. Tony Jacklin wasn't happy with his second shot in 17, nor really satisfied with his third. He won't be happy with his fourth either. He is above the hole, and at best will come out with a bogey 5 on this 428-yard hole. Jerry Anderson knocking in on 18, and Jerry Anderson finishes at 19 over par. Jacklin with a bogey 5 back on 17. Jacklin at 10 over par. He started the day at 5 over, so former U.S. and British Open champion, has had his problems today, slipping to 10 over. Peter Townsend has also had his problems today, and Peter Townsend sees that one drop in to save par. He remains at 8 over. Tom Watson doing some repair work, and Jim Nelford, who is tied with Watson for third spot, holed that short putt for a par 4 on 18 just a few moments ago. Jim Nelford with rounds of 69, 76. He had some problems yesterday, a pair of double bogeys on both 17 and 18. And today he comes back with that fine 3 under par round. Tom Watson saving par on 17 to remain in a deadlock for third place with Jimmy Nelford. As Watson heads over to the 18th tee, the tournament leader, Lee Trevino, is preparing for his second shot on the 17th fairway. 1 over par. The wind has been rather difficult at times today. It has increased in velocity and then died off, and once again it appears to have died down. Fine second shot by Lee Trevino. We understand that Trevino played a 5-iron second on this 17th hole, and I'm sure that he used that 5-iron stand to try and avoid the difficulties the wind would present if the ball was up too high.
That's right. Well, now, I have not seen anybody use their legs any nicer than this Lee Trevino as he works through the shot, working to his left side very strongly, almost holding out. But, Don, I would have to think that he probably used a 3 or 4 wood off the tee on number 17 in order to keep the ball in play.
Danny Halverson playing his second shot. Brandon, Manitoba native, who deserves a lot of credit for the improvement in his game over the past year or so, and the ball just misses the bunker but rolls into the rough. And Halverson, who had a 68 yesterday, the only subpar round, has had some problems today. Defending champion Lanny Watkins with his second shot on 17. And Watkins is in that short rough just to the right-hand side of the 17th green. So Lee Trevino, as he makes his way to the 17th green, continues to hold a 2-stroke advantage over Lanny Watkins. He's 4 in front of Jim Nelford, who has finished, and Tom Watson, who is on the 18th tee. Lanny Watkins playing his third shot on 17. Very difficult to try and hold the ball on the green out of that rough. He rolled it across the green and into the rough on the other side, and that could very well settle the tournament right there. Watkins, the defending champion, the only man really with a chance to catch the leader, Lee Trevino. Dan Halverson moved himself into contention yesterday with that 3 under par 68, but Halverson has gone from 6 over to 10 over in this, the final round.
Don, going back to Lanny Watkins' shot from the right-hand edge of the green, that'll give the viewer an idea of just how fast these greens can be. He had an impossible shot. Couldn't even keep it on the green.
Halverson has something of an advantage than he is going uphill to the flag, but he did not have enough. He is well short, and George Knudsen is putting now for a birdie on 18. Knudsen, not really renowned as one of the game's great putters, leaves it short. But George does finish with a par 4, a round today of 2 over 73, and he is 11 over for the tournament. Watkins now coming back to the flag from the other side, and he has opted to have the pin removed. And he knocked that up very adjacent.
Well,
However,
Don,
it will be a bogey 5 at
That's
17 for Lanny Watkins, and that now increases the advantage of Lee Trevino to 3 shots. The first bogey for Lanny Watkins today. He had parred the preceding 16 holes.
Don, that is a tremendous feat on this kind of a golf course. It's just such terribly, and there are no easy holes. There are very, very few pickup holes, and to go through the first 15 holes, 16 holes without a bogey, that's a tremendous feat.
Trevino now could really clinch it here with a birdie putt on 17. Well, that ball really took a sharp break just at the finish. And Trevino, putting from above the hole, slid past the cup by a couple of feet. Danny Halderson will take a long, hard look at just how much he must borrow for this par putt attempt on 17.
This could be a terribly important putt to Dan Halderson, Don, because I think it's safe to say at this moment that Jim Nelford is going to be #1 man on the World Cup team going to Athens, Greece. But the Canadian Professional Golf Association have a scoring system, a merit system, and I think that if Dan Halderson were to make this putt, it's conceivable that he could be #2 on that team.
And after shooting an 80 on opening day, a lot of people thought that he would be looking at an airline schedule. For Dan Halderson, he's now looking at a bogey 5. Halderson, however, further to the remark about the 80 he shot on opening day, came back with an even par 71, then that 3 under par 68 yesterday. But he is going to slip to 11 over par here, and that would put him in a tie with George Knudsen.
And he now has to par that difficult par 4 18th hole.
Of immediate concern, of course, for Dan Halderson, that putt on 17, a bogey 5. He is 11 over. And Lee Trevino with this putt for a par 4 on 17. And he heads to the 18th tee with a 3-stroke lead. Tony Jacklin playing from underneath the willow tree in the rough and hitting a pretty fair second shot from that position. He is short of the green by about 20 feet, but he did not have a good stance nor a particularly good lie on the left-hand side of that fairway. Townsend from behind the trap, starting it out on the right-hand side, drawing it in, an excellent shot.
John, that's as good a second shot as we have seen here all day. In fact, only Dan Halderson, when he made 2 yesterday, has probably put the ball inside of that shot.
Peter Townsend, who shared the lead with that man, Lee Trevino, at the conclusion of 54 holes, now 6 shots back. Tom Watson occupying 3rd spot, sharing the #3 position with Jimmy Nelford. And he has found the bunker on the right-hand side. And that bunker, particularly the one to the right, there are 3 around this 18th green, certainly coming into play today. Watson has had some problems over the previous 3 rounds with this 18th hole. He had a bogey 5 here yesterday. As we move from the green back to the 18th tee, the view of the lake from the elevated tee, and then back up to an elevated green. Lee Trevino, the tournament leader. Unless disaster really strikes this man on this 441-yard hole, he will win his 2nd championship in Canada in the space of a couple of months, capturing the Canadian Open at Glen Abbey. And he puts the ball dead center, and Lee, you have reason to smile.
Don, I would like to add that I think this 18th hole is just built completely around this man's game from left to right.
Lanny Watkins fashioned a score of 270 at the Shaughnessy Golf and Country Club in Vancouver a year ago in winning the $20,000 first prize. He had an easy time, a 12-stroke victory over Dale Hayes of South Africa. He may have turned this a little. He is going left and into the bunker. Watkins not at all pleased with what has happened over the last couple of holes. For the first 15, he was very much in contention, hotly in pursuit of Lee Trevino. Dan Halderson won't be at all pleased with what has happened to his game in this final round. And Halderson, like Lanny Watkins, has found the bunker off the tee on 18. Lee Trevino, the leader, and with the CPGA Championship all but wrapped up as he makes his way down onto the fairway to play his second shot. We'll be back in just a moment. Back at the 18th green, the second last group of Tony Jacklin, Peter Townsend, and Tom Watson. Tony Jacklin playing his fourth shot, putting for par. He's putting from 15 feet away.
Ben, could we just ask you for just a second, Ben Wright, regarding Tony Jacklin's problems? Has it been a case of mechanics with his golf swing, or has it been a mental situation?
I think a bit of both, Stan, really. I don't think he could make up his mind for a long time which side of the Atlantic he wanted to live on, and then I think the swing went a little awry, and basically his putting has let him down tremendously in the last few years.
Well, he certainly had a long dry spell.
Indeed.
Well, Peter Townsend would like to redeem himself a little on this finishing hole. He had a par yesterday. He made an excellent putt for a par, you may recall. He shared the lead starting today's final round, but now is 8 over. And he will finish at 8 over with a par 4. A round of 77 today, after opening with a 69 and following up with 71 and 75. And just moments ago, Tom Watson played this shot from the bunker. And to his delight, and the chagrin, I'm sure, of Jimmy Nelford, it disappeared, because that makes a rather substantial difference in money winnings, as Tom Watson now occupies third spot by himself, and that is worth $7,700. Jim Nelford, who shared third spot, drops back to fourth. That's worth $5,800. And $20,000 in the Labatt's Gold Cup will be going to this man, Lee Trevino. His second shot on the 18th into the bunker. He is in the bunker on the left-hand side. But I don't imagine that Lee is at all concerned, Stan.
I don't think he is. Now, Lanny Watkins has got a very, very difficult second shot. He's in this trap, and if he can get the ball up on the green from there, he's made one magnificent shot. So I don't think that Lee is too upset.
This indeed will be quite a double for Lee Trevino, the Canadian Open and the CPGA Championship in the same year, within the space of a couple of months.
We've got Dan Halderson in the same trap, and the golfer is playing from about 50, 60 feet below the level of this green, and he's 100 and 185 yards from the green.
Well, yesterday, of course, Dan Halderson made that eagle 2 on this hole.
You can see Danny going at it with a wood. Of course, he's hitting it into a pretty heavy wind.
Well, coming out of that sand, he pushed it out to the right, and he catches the bunker on the right-hand side, the back of that bunker, and that ball could be buried on Dan Halderson. This could be quite a turnaround from round 3 to round 4 for this young professional from Brandon, Manitoba.
This is a very good lesson to the club golfer. It just shows that you aren't restricted to using irons on the fairway traps.
Ball is sitting up. They swing away with the wood, and while Halderson went to the right, Lanny Watkins puts his ball in among the spectators on the left-hand side, and fortunately for the viewers, none of them were hit with that ball. And Lanny Watkins will have his work cut out to try and save par on 18. Lee Trevino will have his name engraved on the Labatt's Gold Cup in just a matter of moments, and we'll return with the final moments right after these messages. A large gallery gathered at 18 as Lee Trevino, who will win this 1979 CPGA Golf Championship, waits for his playing partners, Lanny Watkins and Dan Halderson, to make their way up to the 18th green, one with trouble on the left, the other with some difficulties on the right-hand side. A 441-yard par 4 finishing hole that normally plays as a par 5 for the members, and it was converted to a par 4, shortened slightly, for the CPGA Championship. Dan Halderson in the bunker on the right-hand side. An indication of just how difficult this 18th hole has been. Lee Trevino had a birdie in the first round. Dan Halderson had the eagle yesterday. They have been the only two players with red ink on the board on this 18th hole. Halderson buried in that bunker on the right-hand side. Yesterday, Dan Halderson with that miraculous eagle 2 to finish with a 3-under par 68. He played a 4-wood, the ball bounced and rolled into the cup.
Well, Don, that was yesterday. Now today, of course, we have Dan Halderson buried in the bunker, and he's got a very difficult shot. But first of all, we have Lanny Watkins from behind the 18th green, also chipping from a difficult angle.
Ball will be going slightly downhill towards the cup. Excellent shot from that position by Lanny Watkins, the defending champion. Watkins should be able to save par. He had to pop that ball up and get some action on it.
Down here he is using a sand iron out of the fairly heavy grass from behind the green. He's got to get all the spin on it that he possibly can in order to hold it at the cup, and he did just that. Magnificent shot.
Lanny Watkins marking his ball, and Dan Halderson really faces a difficult task here on 18.
Well, Don, it's a downhill, it's a side hill lie, a downhill lie, and the ball is buried. He's got very little green to work with, and I would be very surprised. He'd have to make a great shot to get it within 15 or 20 feet.
I'm not even certain whether he can go at the flag from that position, Stan.
I think you're absolutely right. Well, he obviously didn't get it out of the trap, unfortunately. But that has to be one of the more difficult trap shots that you can encounter, and especially on the 72nd hole of a golf tournament.
Halderson now playing his 4th shot. Fine recovery by Dan Halderson. He's looking at a bogey 5, but it could have been much worse. That ball really buried, and really, Stan, he didn't have any shot at all.
Well, you're absolutely right. Now, if you give these boys a good lie in a sand trap with the technique that they have, chances are that they're going to be able to get up and down most times. But when you've got it buried like he had, forget it.
Now, talking about getting it up and down, this man can do it very, very well out of the sand. And there's an example.
Well, he could go in there and close both eyes, I'm sure, and just draw the club back and come up with a 1-putt. Of course, when you have a 3-shot lead, that doesn't hurt also.
No, you can be very relaxed as you wander off into the sand trap on the 18th hole. 3-stroke advantage. And they may have to take a rather close look to see which player is away in terms of putting order on this 18th hole.
Well, I think it's very safe to say that Mr. Trevino will be putting out last. He'll give the other golfers the courtesy of holding out first, so that the crowd, I'm sure, are going to break loose as soon as this tournament's over.
Dan Halderson with a bogey 5 on 18. Halderson, a couple of years ago, had his PGA Tour card He lost it, went back, got it last fall, has been on the tour this year, and has been playing quite well. As a matter of fact, a few weeks ago in the Quad Cities Open, he was the leader after 54 holes, and he had some problems in the final round.
He's more than capable, Don, of leading any golf tournament.
Man capable of leading and of also winning, Lanny Watkins. 4 over par for the tournament with a round of 72 today. A picture of consistency. He opened with a 73, then he had a 71 and back-to-back 72s. Trevino pausing momentarily, and a remark from someone in the gallery has produced a smile on the master of the one-liners.
I think somebody said that's good, Lee.
It's good now as Lee Trevino comes up with a par 4 on 18, and Lee Trevino finishes at 1 over par for the tournament with a 1 under par 70 in this, the final round. Over the national layout at Woodbridge, Ontario, Lee Trevino, the Canadian Open champion, and now the 1979 Labatt International Golf Classic champion. And the man who won it a year ago in the pink shirt, signing his scorecard in the presence of Dave Zink. That's Lanny Watkins. Lee Trevino applying his signature to the scorecard. Of course, it's not official until he officially endorses that card.
Well, Don, that is one of the absolute musts, is to check the card, and before you sign it, you've got to check it and make good and sure that it is word for word, just as you played it.
And play it well today indeed, did Lee Trevino. And I think the conditions today were particularly well suited to Trevino's game. He likes to play in the wind.
No question about that, Don. And I think that the golf course eased up just a little bit today. We had that overnight rain, and they did water fairly heavily, so that the ball was holding on the greens. And I would think that the boys are getting a little bit more used to the golf course. Consequently, we did have a few scores today that were par or under. So you can only fool these fellas just for so long.
The presentation ceremonies will be taking place on the 18th green. I think the club members might have some difficulties tomorrow playing on this 18th green, because a lot of people are walking around the putting surface.
They're going to all go out there tomorrow and say, hey, I don't see anything too tough about this golf course, but it is proven that it's one of the real tough golf courses in all of the world. I think that Glen Abbey is a difficult course, but I would have to say the way this course was set up the last 4 days, it would have to be the most difficult course these fellows have played in Canada.
$20,000 will go to the winner, Lee Trevino, along with the Labatt's Gold Cup. $11,800 to the runner-up this year, Lanny Watkins, the man who engraved his name on the trophy last year at Shaughnessy in Vancouver. And then Tom Watson with that sand shot on the 18th hole, picking up third prize of $7,700. And Jimmy Nelford emerges as the top Canadian. Nelford with a fine finishing round today for $5,800. The presentation ceremony, as I mentioned, will take place on the 18th green. And for Jimmy Nelford, with that low Canadian performance, not only does he pick up a sizable check from this tournament, he will also receive 2 tickets anywhere that CP Air flies, plus $2,000 with which to spend on that journey from the sponsors of this tournament, Labatt's. And he'll also, of course, represent Canada in the World Cup to take place in Athens. Well, Lee Trevino is the victor, and standing down to chat with him, Ben Wright.
Lee, congratulations for the second time in very few months.
Thank you, Ben. It's a great feeling. I thought that I could have probably shot an over par today and won, but I played quite well today. It rained a little bit last night, softened up the course a little bit, was able to hit iron shots, in other words, at the flag. But I didn't know exactly what kind of day it was going to be, because I hit a 5-wood off the first hole and a 9-iron in there, no, a wedge. And I was in a divot, and I 3-putted. I mean, I hit the first putt I hit, I couldn't get it within 20 feet of the hole. I mean, I played it wrong. And then I go to the second hole and drove it down the middle, and I'm in another divot. So I says, uh-oh, it's going to be a long day. But I almost held it on the 8th hole, made birdie. And then from there, I made some, I just hit the ball well on the way in.
And then it really came down to you and Lanny, really.
It was a big turning point for me was on the 16th when I had just finished three-putting the 15th hole, and I left it short of the green in that hill, short of the green on the 16th hole. Didn't really hit a great chip shot, but I didn't want to get above the hole.
No.
And I left myself with about a 5-foot curler, and I made that. And it was a big turning point, and Lanny just missed a birdie there. So, and then he bogeyed the 17th, and I almost held a 6-iron there. And that putt was so treacherous that I actually could not hit the ball to the break. In other words, if I hit it to the break and missed the hole, I'd go 4 or 5 feet by. But you know, it's pretty comfortable when you're coming into that particular hole and you're leading by 2, and then you know that Lanny's already made bogey.
Why is it you always win here, Lee? I mean, this is a unique performance, winning the Canadian Open and the PGA in 1 year.
You know, I have no idea. I guess the best definition is a wetback is really a true American come into Canada. I think that's what it is. It's not a Texan coming to Oklahoma, believe me. But I really don't know. I just seem to enjoy playing here, and had the pleasure this year of not only winning the Canadian Open but also the Canadian PGA. So,
very nice week's work. Thank you very much, Lee Trevino.
Thank you.
Ben Wright chatting with the tournament champion, Lee Trevino. And Trevino, of course, has won 3 Canadian Open Golf Championships and now the CPGA Championship. The prize presentation, and here's Steve Armitage.
And welcome to the conclusion of the Labatt International Golf Classic for the CPGA Championship on the 18th green at the National Golf Club in Woodbridge, Ontario. Please welcome Mr. Al Ewan, the president of the CPGA, the Canadian Professional Golfers Association. Al?
Thank you, Mr. Armitage. When you get to this stage in the tournament, there's not a whole lot left to do except thank about 200 people who are involved in the running of this fine tournament. A great deal of them are right behind me, and I think they deserve a hand. As far as the CPGA, our organization, is concerned, there is one group, I think, who deserves a special thanks, and that is Labatt's Brewing Company, because without them, this tournament wouldn't be at all possible. I think it's been a great tournament, and there's not too many tournaments where our Canadian professionals are allowed to tee it up with guys like Lee Trevino and Lanny Watkins and Tommy Watson. And this can do nothing but better the play of Canadian golfers, I think. I think it's a great idea. Again, to all the people involved in the organizing and running of the tournament from the CPGA, thank you. Thank you very, very much.
And thank you, Al, and the CPGA for all the fine work that you've done this week. No tournament can function without the support of the club members, and its membership is no exception. It's my pleasure to introduce the owner of the National Golf Club, Mr. and Mrs. Gil Bleckman. The club president of the National, Mr. Harley Califf. The tournament chairman, Mr. Norm Goldman. And other members of the tournament committee, Director of Promotions, Mr. Dick Bradbeer, Labatt Brewing Company. And now the reason behind the competition to recognize the winners. The runner-up in the Labatt's International Classic, Lanny Watkins. And to present the check, Mr. Bob Benedike, the Vice President, Ontario Region, Labatt Brewing Company. Bob? And now the winner of the second annual Labatt's International Classic, Lee Trevino.
something else to polish. Hey? You don't mind if I say a word or two, do you? I mean... First of all, I would like to thank the CPGA. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Gil and Norm and all the people here at the National Golf Club. When Ben Kern asked me if I was interested in playing here, I came over when I was at Glen Abbey and tried a round of golf here and lost so damn many balls. I really didn't know whether I wanted to play or not, but I felt like with good weather we had bad weather there. It's just a shame that you, the viewing audiences here today, are not able to see, in other words, how tough this golf course really is. I know people ask me every day, is it tougher than Glen Abbey? Damn right it's tougher than Glen Abbey. I felt like I played... I felt like I played a little better here than I did at Glen Abbey and didn't score as well. But it's very difficult to stand in the middle of the ice rink and tell you how to play hockey, simply because you have to get on the golf course to see, and hopefully in the near future you'll get a chance to play this great golf course. But 2 tournaments in Canada, 2 wins. I can't say it. Thanks for your support. I hope to see you again at Glen Abbey next year. Thank you very much.
Well, that may be a little difficult at Glen Abbey next year, as the Canadian Open will be held at Royal Montreal. However, I'm sure there are a great many people who will. Lee Trevino just correcting things, apologizing to the audience, saying, I'll see you here in 81. And there he is, Lee Trevino, the winner of the Labatt's International Classic, to go along with the Canadian Open Championship he won earlier this year. Back at Glen Abbey, and presentation ceremonies are continuing with the large crowd surrounding the 18th green at this Labatt's International Golf Classic. The winner, Lee Trevino, and the leading Canadian, Jim Nelford. And Nelford with a fine final round. And it was interesting, I thought, that Lee Trevino, the champion, in referring to Jim Nelford, made a remark earlier in the week about the fine leg action of this player.
Don, that is absolutely correct. We talked with Lee about Jim Nelford's golf swing and so on, and he has a tremendous arc, but the thrust that he has from his legs, the lower part of his body, through the shot itself, really adds to the power that he can generate. And Lee Trevino, of course, I don't think anybody is superior to him in that department.
Lee Trevino continuing to accept congratulations, and I'm sure he'll also be signing a few autographs as he makes his way up to the clubhouse. Ben Wright, are you still standing by down below?
Yes, I'm trampled on a little, Stan, but on one knee.
Well, Dan, I would just like to add my congratulations to Lee Trevino for being such a tremendous booster of golf. He's a credit to the game. He's not only a great player, but a great person, and he really generates a tremendous amount of interest.
Yes, and with me I've got a young man I think should generate a lot of interest in Canada for a long time to come, Jim Nelford. Jim, you've had a tremendous tournament, and you're having a pretty good time on the American tour. Not quite into the top 60 yet, but I suppose that's your ultimate aim this year.
Yes, that is. I've been working towards it all year. I've had a little bit of slump as of late, but it seems this tournament's kind of turned me around, so hopefully I'll be able to make a little bit more and get in that top 60.
Now, Glen Abbey and the National Golf Club, 2 wonderful golf courses. Which do you rate the most difficult?
Well, I would have to say this one is a little more severe. It's a little tougher. The greens are smaller, so it makes your shots just that much more exacting. They're both great golf courses, and this is, I would have to say, just a little bit more severe.
What are your most valuable memories of the week?
Well, today mostly, because it's my shot 68 today. I really played well today, and unfortunately Tom Watson holed out of the bunker to beat me out of third, but I was very happy with the way it ended up anyways.
Thank you very much indeed, Jim, and best of luck to you. We'll be seeing you all through the United States.
Thanks.
Back to Don.
Jim Nelford, and of course Jim Nelford has quite a cheering contingent. A friend of his organized a group called Nelford's Navy, and they are certainly evident and have been evident throughout the week here at the national course, wearing T-shirts, and you caught a glimpse earlier during our telecast of those T-shirts the Nelford Navy. And, of course, all these groups began a few years back. Arnie's Army started it all, Lee's Fleas, and now we've got a new one, the Nelford Navy. And if he ever gets to that winner's circle on the PGA Tour, they'll have reason to be excited.
Well, Don, there's no question. He's that good, and I have to take my hat off to him. I was not quite sure of his putting action, but today, after watching him hold a few putts left-handed, I'm going to have to say he made a believer out of me.
Lee Trevino, the winner of the Labatt International Golf Classic, and now for colleagues Steve Armitage, Ben Wright, and Stan Leonard, this is Don Whitman saying so long from the Woodbridge National Course.
This is CBC.